Congratulations, you're under contract. What's next? Oh gosh. Usually it's a home inspection, and being able to navigate our way through things like the home inspection is part of the value we bring to the table. So let's first of all talk about what goes into a home inspection. What does a home inspector look at least in New York State? And then how we work our way through the process to get to the other end and one step closer to closing. So there's two sides to every story, right? Even a home inspection. You've got the seller side and the buyer side. Each side is a little bit different because who you're representing and their whole take on the transaction is completely different. So first let's look at what is probably the easier side. That's the seller side of a home inspection. When you list the house for sale, you're already having a conversation with them about, hey, a buyer contract is going to have a home inspection in it. You know, just get used to it. It's going to happen. So you've already done some legwork to prepare them on what's going to happen with the home inspection. But you also want to make sure that when you get to that stage that you tell them, here's our next step. That's something I like to do, is they may ask a question about closing. It's like, well, let's deal with that when we get there. Let's talk about the home inspection, because now that we're under contract, the home inspection is what's next. Mr. Seller, the home inspection is going to report on everything we're dealing with your house. If there's a crack in your driveway, they're going to say there's a crack in your driveway is defective, you better have somebody look at that. But the point is, everything like that is written up in the report. And that way, you can't say the seller didn't or the buyer didn't know, right? And we're going to go over all those different pieces and parts of the home inspection so that we know exactly what it does cover. Because these are the type of things that you have to prepare your seller for, you know, when you're doing a walkthrough of the property, when you're talking about how to prep your home, things like that. Some of these things that are on the home inspection, maybe you want to get those taken care of ahead of time because they're going to come up. It will be an issue written up. Pretty much regardless of who the home inspector is, those issues are going to get written up on the report. All right. So that's kind of what you want to prepare your seller for. I tell my sellers that when I work with a buyer, I like to tell a buyer that this is for the big things that we don't see through our walkthrough, or maybe it points out the obvious. But it's not for the small little things, although often that's what's asked. So then when we get to that point, we have to look at what's really the cost and the impact of what they're asking for compared to the alternatives of saying no or going back on the market. And then maybe people think, oh, there must be all these issues because it's back on the market about as long as a home inspection would take. So those are the main factors that I talk to with a seller about a home inspection. So now the slightly different perspective from the buyer perspective, preparing your buyer. First of all, once you're under contract, there's still a lot of work to do. And you have to make sure that they realize that, you know, we still have things to work our way through. One thing that I like to do is I like to give my buyer a next step email as well as talking through it. But my email walks them through, here's your next step now that we're under contract. And the first thing it talks about is the details on getting the escrow deposit. That's the first thing. Setting up the home inspection, that's the second thing. The third one is confirming their attorney. And the fourth one is the loan application, if applicable, getting all the information to the lender so they can start the loan application. In addition to that, when I talk about the home inspection, I want to prepare them for the home inspection. I want to give them an idea what it covers. This video is also going to talk to you about all the areas that are covered in New York State, and it's based on law. Okay, so as we work our way through, I hope you find all this information helpful. And if you do, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, so then you'll find out anytime I add other videos like this that you may find helpful as you work through your transactions. Okay, so let's talk about prepping our buyer. Mr. Buyer, the home inspection is to identify things that we didn't see or notice during our walkthrough of the property. We talked about a lot of things as we went through, but maybe we didn't see something because it's in the panel box and we don't get in there, or maybe we didn't turn on the heat in all the rooms and make sure it's working. You know, so I want to prepare them for what it is and what it isn't. It's not a time to, well, I was going to say it's not time to renegotiate, but it really is. It is another point of negotiation for things that we didn't already see or notice or factor in to the purchase price that we're now under contract for. All right, so I tell them it's for the big things, not the small things. It's for, you know, those major things. Maybe it's like if the heat doesn't work or there's a safety issue with the electricity. Those are the type of things that we're looking for, because those are things that we want to have them fix. But it might not be, well, there's a missing outlet cover somewhere, or, I mean, it's a dollar fix. So, we're under contract for X number of dollars. So we want to focus on the big things. Okay. So let's talk about what is part of a home inspection in New York State, because you as a licensed real estate salesperson need to know. If you're an associate broker or broker, you should already know, but you need to understand, in New York State, the home inspection and the things that are covered in the home inspections are part of a standards of practice. Standards of practice are pretty common in a lot of things when they want things standardized on what it's going to cover or what it's not going to cover. So the standards of practice in New York State are actually covered by law, because that's the way governments and states like to do it. It's very clear. It's in law. If you have any questions, too bad. It's in the law. The first thing they're going to cover, site conditions. They're going to observe and report what they see whenever we're talking about all these different areas. But the site conditions is the first one. So they're going to look at the drainage, the grading, trees and vegetation. What's close to the house? What's too close to the house? What's this looming monster tree hanging over that could be a problem down the road? Does it look like the grade of the grade of the property comes towards the house or away from the house? Those are the type of things they'll talk about with site. They're also going to cover structural systems. They're going to look at the foundation, the framing, the walls, the ceiling, the roof, and talk about what they see. It's not an engineer report. It's a home inspection observation of the basic observations. Like I said, they're not going to give you an engineered schematic on, the wall is tilted in at 2 degrees or 2 inches from the top, or, it's going to be, there's cracking in the foundation. It should be, maybe further evaluated by an engineer or things like that. The walls are unfinished. Maybe that could be an issue, because lenders have issues with things that aren't complete. So they're going to talk about all those systems. They're going to report on it room by room, and usually all these systems are organized and reported on room by room. So they might do kitchen, living room, bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, basement, attic, garage, things like that. They're gonna report on. Then they're also going to talk about the exterior. So there's quite a bit on the exterior, because there's a lot going on the outside. That's protecting, the inside from wind and weather and damage and things like that. So they're going to talk about the type of siding and how is it, and the flashing to get water away, the roof and the drainage, from the roof, and the gutters and all that type of thing. They're going to report on the windows and just everything on the outside of a house. They're going to report on, maybe briefly, but then if there's something that has maybe a material defect or a safety issue, they're going to put a little bit more comments. Good reports will have plenty of pictures so that you can see what they're talking about as well, which also reminds me, a lot of times they'll let the buyer be there either for the whole inspection or towards the end of the inspection. More towards the end is more common, because they got a lot of work to do. So another thing, they're going to report on the roof conditions. So they're going to talk about what type of roof it is, maybe how old, what condition, how is the flashing, things like that. They're going to give you a report on the skylights, the chimney flashing. They're also going to say how they observed it, either on the roof, maybe a drone for part of it if they can't get and look up at the top of the chimney. So they'll usually give an idea of that. And in our market, in the wintertime, they may not be able to go up on the roof, or maybe it's covered with snow and they can't see it. So they'll also often report on the percentage of the roof that was not able to be inspected. So they usually give you an idea of that. And then looking at the inside, they're going to talk about the plumbing system, the water supply, the distribution. If they see any leaks, they're going to report on that. They're also going to operate the waste line. So they're going to run the water. They're going to see if faucets drip. And a lot of times they'll run the water maybe for a half an hour, maybe an hour, just to make sure that it's running enough water that they can see. Now, honestly, if there's a leak under a sink, sometimes it's a matter of just going, like that and tightening it just a little bit, and the leak will stop. That's not their job. They're there just to observe and report on what they do see. After the plumbing, they'll also talk about the electrical systems. This is the part that obviously requires a little bit more skill, because they're usually taking the panel box cover off. They're observing, they're looking, like a common thing, they're looking for double tap breakers where two wires go into one spot on the breaker. It's not designed to do that. So they'll usually report on that. They'll make sure it's grounded. They'll just report on the overall condition as well, and with the technicalities that they have. They will also test either all or a sampling of the outlets. They'll also report on if there are ground fault circuit interrupt or GFCI breakers in the places that you're supposed to have them. And that's usually within 6 feet of water. Okay, so those are another thing that they're going to do, test outlets and just make sure that, you know, that that the electrical stuff is done the way it's supposed to be done, or report on how it is done and maybe what should be done to correct it. Usually what they say is to contract a professional, have them evaluate it for you. They don't usually get into too much of the details there unless they're walking you through it and telling you that. After the electrical systems, they're going to talk about the heating systems. They're going to operate the thermostat. They're going to report and make sure that all the places that heat is supposed to be, it has heat. They're going to make sure that if it's like a hot air system, they're going to make sure that it's blowing through all of the ducts. If it's electrical, they'll make sure that they're all working. They'll report if they're on thermostats, which you know, obviously a thermostat on the other side of the room is better than having to adjust the little knobs on an electric baseboard. So they're going to report on that. They're also going to do the same thing for the air conditioning system. If present, they're going to operate the thermostat. They're going to give you an idea. Does it look like it's cooling? What's the, you know, the general setup of the components of that as well. And then they're going to get to the interior. The interior, again, there's a lot to cover on the interior of a home. They're going to report on the material used, the general condition, the walls, the ceilings, the floors, the stairways, railings, handrails, the height of the tread, you know, if it's insufficient or you know, not normal. They're going to report on abnormalities of anything, like, oh, there's a dip in the floor, and probably because, you know, who knows what. So they're going to talk, go room by room. They're going to say if there is or isn't a closet. they're going to just report on any defects that they notice. Okay, and then that'll be in the report, usually with pictures as well. Then they're going to also talk about the insulation and ventilation of the whole home. They're going to usually try and observe the insulation in the attic in any places that they can. They'll talk about how they observed and reported on the insulation. And it's usually, you know, we accessed a scuttle, which is usually a small square in the ceiling of the top floor of the home somewhere. A lot of homes have those in closets or in hallways, so it'll just depend. But you may have seen that. But they'll usually take pictures of it. They'll say, like, for example, there's observed 6 feet, or 6 feet, yeah, right, 6 inches of cellulose type insulation. Recommend adding more, that type of thing. They'll also give you an idea of the air ventilation, whether you have soffit vents or peak vents. You know, so they're gonna give you a report on all that. They'll report if there's insufficient ventilation. That's, you know, really good to know, because that's something that can make your home, you know, heat and cool better. They're going to report on fireplaces if you've got one. They're going to report any visible system components, like they'll talk about caps and blower appliances that either do or don't operate or whatever. They'll look at the dampers and things like that. They don't really operate anything. They're not going to start a stove or a fire in your wood stove or in your chimney. But they usually will make a kind of a standard recommendation that you should have it inspected prior to closing. That's pretty common to see with fireplaces. And sometimes in listings they'll say fireplace has or hasn't been used in X number of years and presented as is, because they don't know if it works or not. So then the home inspector will report on attics as well. That kind of goes in line with the insulation part. but they'll take pictures of the attic. They'll observe what they and comment on what they see. If there's poor ventilation, it may be discoloration in the underside of the roof coverings. So they're going to report on that. That in New York State is what is part of the standards of practice based on New York State law. Okay, so now that that's all done, now what do we do? Okay, we've got a home inspection. It's 30 pages. Oh my gosh, it can be overwhelming. That's part of why you need to prepare your buyers that there's going to be a lot there. And that's why I kind of make the joke about, well, if there's a crack in the driveway, you got a defective driveway and you better get that fixed and have somebody professional come and charge you a lot of money to fix it. No, I'm just kidding. But you need to prepare them so they know what to expect, okay? Because when they do get the report, and if you don't get a report copy by email, then just tell the buyer, hey, when you get the report, send me a copy if I'm not on distribution for it. So then we can go through it and talk about it together. Remember, you're the expert, not at home inspection, but with the real estate process. So I can help you through it if I have a copy of the report. If I don't see the report, then it's hard for me to make recommendations to you on how we should move forward. Okay? That's kind of the point that you want to make, is like, I'm your real estate problem solver, but I only know the problems that I can see. Being able to review the report is a good way to do it. And then, so when you get the report, we're okay, we're not okay, we want some repairs, or we want a price adjustment. Those are usually the options. So basically, wide scope, right? Wide scope. Based on which way you decide with the buyer, or what the buyer decides with your advice, then you have to document that so that you can move forward. Say we're not okay, then it's going to be a termination based on home inspection. We're not satisfied, we're moving away. You do that form, signed by both parties, and you go from there. And we'll talk about what to do, who gets the paperwork, we'll talk about after. So that's what you do if we're not okay. If we are okay, you can say we're removing the home inspection contingency with no asks. We're not asking for repairs or money or whatever. So, and that just signals and formalizes that we're okay to move forward. Okay. Or if you're asking for repairs, then you're gonna list and detail the repairs that you're asking for. My recommendation is that you list the page number and the item number from the report that you're asking to be repaired. Okay, and usually you're saying seller will repair the following items at their cost and expense. All right. If you're asking for a price adjustment, then usually you do a price adjustment that doesn't say it's because of the home inspection, because lenders really kind of get squirrely about that, and because then they want to know what's in the home inspection. Home inspections do not go to your lender, at least in our market, in our state. It's not the way it's typically done. And the way I tell them that is the home inspection is a report for you, the buyer, so that you know and see a snapshot of the home that you're under contract to buy. And then if it gives you the opportunity to withdraw from the transaction if you have issues. If the bank wants to see it, the bank gets a bank appraisal. That's what they get. That's their report. The home inspection is not typically for them. Okay? So if you're asking for the price adjustment, then that paperwork gets done saying the purchase price is amended to be X number of dollars, signed by both parties, and then that goes out. So what it is, it's deciding a way to proceed is what that paperwork is, right? It's a point of negotiation. So once you decide how you're going to resolve the home inspection contingency of your contract, then you know what to put in writing. So once you do that, and your broker can probably give you, or probably has samples, and if you work with me as a business partner, I have a sample I use. I'm not an attorney. If I was, I wasn't yours. But I have samples of some of those for my people, and they're usually pretty basic. So when you get signatures on that agreement, other people got to know. Number one, anytime your client signs paperwork, your client gets a copy, right? Signed by both parties, shared to client. You also want to share it to your attorney. As a buyer, you may have two. You may have somebody representing your buyer personally and somebody representing the bank that they're using as well. So just make sure that regardless of which way that is, that the attorney or attorneys on your side of the transaction get a copy of any signed document that relates to the transaction. In this case, it's a home inspection, right? So copy to your broker, you can do that different ways. With eXp Realty, the way we do that is through SkySlope. The signed copy goes into SkySlope as an amendment to the contract. Okay? And who else gets a copy? The lender gets a copy if you're using a lender, especially if it's a price change or something that changes the terms and conditions of the contract. If it's just a series of repairs to be done, the lender doesn't need a copy of that. That is the home inspection. Okay? Any questions? Feel free to email me, comment below, whatever. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Call, text, or email me if I can help. Thanks for watching.